and welcome to the channel. I'm Ivan Kutsia. With me today, Rudolf Venter from Fish on Africa, the distributors for fox and mollicks and striking. But today specifically, we're going to be looking at the Salmo baits. We'll be doing a giveaway also, so make sure you watch till the end. All right, so we're going to get into this shortly. Rudolf, thank you for joining us, and let's get on. So the brand is quite diverse and quite popular, and has become popular over the years, especially for the yellowfish guys. Very few baits on the market that conform to that specific niche, you know, Salmo being one of them, and thankfully we've got Rudolf, the expert. It's always good to get the guys that know proper, you know, the face of the product, to have a good conversation with them. So Rudolf is going to take us through the Hornet range, all the way from the Hornet 2 up to the 5.5. He's going to talk a bit about the specific application. So Rudolf, over to you, starting at the Hornet 2. Take us through there. Where do we start?
Thank you very much, Divan. It's lucky to be here and to chat with you guys and to tell you about a brand that I love so much. We're going to start off, like Divan said, with the smallest one, with the 2.5 centimeter Hornets. Now this little guy can catch pretty much anything. It's a great all-rounder lure. I think most serious anglers, even a lot of social anglers, have them in their boxes. It's a great bait to have, because that one day you have that nothing else is working, you know, you get something and walk away from a blank if you have one of these in your box to save the day. So the 2.5, it's a very light lure. You have to have a finesse setup to fish with it, obviously, light lines to get some distance with it. You're not going to throw it a mile. It is a very small light lure, but it's going to get any size fish for you. A lot of guys like using it for smaller yellowfish, even at Sterkfontein and dams that have some shy yellowfish. It's a great option to use. And then it's also a winner if you're fishing farm dams for kerper and so on. Was a very popular kerper lure.
And this being a sinking variant, obviously that's preferential, because now you can regulate where in the water column you want that bait to specifically operate in. The floating model, however, would be much more limited in terms of the application.
Exactly. Now, for sure, the fact that it's a sinking model allows you to work it at the depth you prefer. It's a slow sinking model, so you mustn't be too afraid of losing it or it getting stuck. It doesn't get stuck easily. It also only has one treble hook at the back, so it's pretty weedless. But yeah, it does have its shortcomings. And I think the main thing regarding this lure is that you must know your distance is going to be, your casting distance is going to be limited. So that's
if
the
you
thing.
effectively don't have a real specialist outfit, it's going to be difficult to throw the 2. And would you rather then recommend customers look at the 3, which is slightly larger in size, get a little bit more distance?
Yeah, the 3 centimeter has quite a few advantages. It's one of my favorite sizes to throw. First of all, because it's a little bigger, it's got a little bit more casting weight behind it, so you're going to get distance a lot easier with this model. That's one of the best things regarding this lure. Also, it's a generally, because it's a little bigger, it also catches bigger fish in general. When you say targeting yellowfish, especially small scale yellowfish, the ones you get in the low felt and the high felt and so on, I would rather use the 3 centimeter. It's a good option for small scale, large scale yellowfish in general.
More versatile bait.
Yeah, definitely. I'd rather start off with this lure most of the time and move over to a 2 centimeter if I'm not getting any bites. Generally, the small and bigger fish will go for the 3, except if it's one of those days that you have to grind, and then I'll start moving to the 2 centimeter.
All right, so moving on to the 3.5, so I noticed there's 2 different variants. So there's a shallow runner, and then the standard lip as you'd get on the 2 and the 3 centimeter.
Exactly.
Where would you prefer to throw the shallow runner as opposed to the deeper running model?
Okay, first of all, this is the rattling hornet. So when it comes to the 3.5 rattling hornet, this is now the standard model. It dives a little deeper in general. This one will dive about 1.3 meters or so. It casts exceptionally well because it has a long cast system. So a lot of anglers prefer to fish with rattling hornets compared to the old school models that doesn't have that technology in them. But for this lure, this is probably my favorite all-rounder lure that I will fish any waters that have yellowfish. I would definitely start off with a 3.5 and from there on I'll experiment. But this is probably the best lure all-rounder in the range. I really love fishing with them. When I want to fish a little deeper pools, I'll start with the standard models. If I'm going to fish in rapids, I'm talking about fast-flowing water, then I will start looking at the shallow running models. These shallow runners was designed to obviously run a lot shallower. So this one will run about 0.5 meter if you're lucky, and that's where they really work well when fished in rapids, white water, flowing water.
So typically what you're saying is two different baits to cover two different scenarios. The deeper tail end of the pool, you'd rather go with the deeper diving model, and if you're fishing in the rapid, which is obviously shallower, we're going to look at the more shallow running.
Exactly, that's where the shallow run is going to come through for you strongly when you're fishing in the white water. And what we've seen is when you throw standard models, you can fish them in white waters, but you get stuck a lot. As soon as you move over to the shallow runners, you get stuck a lot less and you start to catch more fish. That's at the end of the day what you want. So that's where they really shine for me. And another scenario is where you have, say, some vegetation growing from the bottom. I know in some pools of the Vaal you have a lot of vegetation often, and then you can bring this shallow runner over those vegetation, because it just runs the right depth that you bring it over the cover, and yellowfish can come up from below and smash the bait fish.
You can also kind of regulate how high you want it in the water column by either lifting the rod tip or dipping it down. So you can either take away a foot or add another foot just by the position of your rod tip.
For sure. I also feel that the shallow runner doesn't have such an aggressive action compared to the standard models. Often it will feel like it's not necessarily even running, but you have to get used to the shallow runner. It doesn't have such a direct contact to it, but it still works amazingly well. Also a great lure for Natal scalies, guys. If you're fishing in the Midlands and so on, fishing Natal rivers, great bait to throw for Natal scalies.
Scaly are quite aggressive,
and
I'm sure they'll even take the size up from that.
They will.
Much of what we talked about now can be transferred to the 4.5 shallow runner, that just being the next size up.
Yes.
So I'm assuming if your fish on average are a little bit larger size, that's when you would prefer to throw the slightly bigger model?
Exactly. When it comes to the 4.5 centimeter rattling hornet, this is the most used bait for the Richtersveld. Lower Orange River, this is what you're going to be throwing about 80% of the time. Great bait to catch big smallmouth, trophy smallmouth yellowfish, as well as big largemouth yellowfish. I've actually caught my biggest largemouth yellowfish on a 4.5. So it's a great lure to cast in those waters. You can work it in the deeper pools and as well as most of the rapids, as long as it's not too shallow. And I think that's probably the main purpose of it. And then some guys, a lot of social anglers like to also cast it in farm dams for a little bit of bass action. But in generally, it's probably the most used hornet for trophy smallmouth and largemouth in South Africa.
Absolutely. And how does the standard rattling hornet 4.5 differ to the floating hornet 4? Because right off the bat, they look very similar in terms of actual shape and lip. What's the fundamental difference between the two?
I think when it comes to the 4 centimeter, one of the main things that makes a difference for me is that the diving depth. While your rattling hornet is going to dive up to 1.8 meters, the 4 centimeter only dives about a little bit more than a meter.
Okay, so fundamental difference is just diving depth.
Diving depth is probably the main thing there. And then obviously a smaller profile tends to catch smaller fish. It doesn't have the long cast systems. It doesn't cast as well as the rattling hornets. I mean, that 4.5, you can smoke it. You can really get good distance with it.
I did not know that there was a difference between those two.
This one, not the best casting distance, but I also feel I think it's maybe used also mostly for the social guy fishing for bass. Some guys throw it for Vaal River yellowfish as well, where you don't necessarily need to get a lot of casting distance. But when you go to the orange, most of the guys will move over to the bigger rattling hornets.
And how does the 5.5 fit in? Is that aimed specifically at the largemouth yellowfish? Perhaps even could be a mainstay for bass also?
Yeah, that's exactly where they fit in. When it comes to the 5.5, I use it for for actually free applications. I would say it's when you're going to target bigger trophy bass. I would say some guys even use it in competitions. That's the one application, because it dives about 2.5 meters. So you definitely need deeper water to fish effectively with this bait. Otherwise, I use it when I'm fishing lower orange for trophy smallmouth and largemouth and deeper pools. So in those main pools where you want to get down to the bottom, that's where I will use this. Generally when I'm fishing deeper than 2 meters, that's a good place, and you want to run it as close to the structure as possible. And then another thing you have to keep in mind with this bait is that it rockets. So you can throw this a mile on a light spinning setup. So you're going to get the most casting distance out of this bait, which can make a huge difference for you when you're fishing that thin clear water where those fish can see you so easily. You want to have that advantage of fishing from a distance. And that's where I often throw this bait. It's just, it all depends on the depth that you're fishing. If you're starting to hit bottom and getting stuck a lot, then I'll move over to the 4.5s. But this one definitely also has its place. Ironically, I caught my biggest smallmouth yellowfish in the Richtersveld on the 5.5 when they were lying deep in pools.
Bigger bait, bigger fish.
Exactly. So yeah, and the last place where people like to use this bait as well is even for tigerfish when fishing the Okavango Delta and so on.
I mean, bream species
yeah,
also.
Nemwe will
Nemwe's
smash
gonna
this.
eat that, yeah.
So it's a great bait to also keep in mind when you're fishing up north, fishing those waters, Kafui, Okavango Deltas and BZ. You can always have a few 4.5 and 5.5s in your arsenal, and you know you're going to get some fish on the boat.
Well, great. On that note, let's give a couple away. So Rudolf was kind enough to bring us some of the new colors. We'll get those on close up now. The hollow red perch and the hollow bleak, both in the 4.5. So what you need to do to be eligible to win these, in the comment section of this video, drop a photo with a fish with a Salmo in the mouth, and we're going to put all of you into a lucky draw, and we'll notify the winner as soon as we start running the competition.
Yeah.
So Rudolf, thank you very much for that. I'm sure that will be appreciated. We'll let you know who the winner of this competition is. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Always great to get the face behind the product out there and to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. So thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Thank you, Divan. It's been a great pleasure and privilege. Thank you.
Thank you.